10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 466. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 466. Hope your summer is going well if you are in the northern hemisphere, and I hope the end of your winter is going well if you're in the southern hemisphere. We are starting a brand new series this month. So we just got done with our sort of long 2-month series on Blues for Alice, and we're going to stick with one of the masters here, Charlie Parker, but we're going to do something completely different, and we are going to use another one of his tunes, a little small snippet of the melody of Billie's Bounce, and we're going to talk about another really important concept, which is how we can use tunes and solos and phrases and ideas from these master musicians to create an endless well of things that we can work on for varying degrees of concerns, right? When we practice jazz, we have so many concerns that we need to address. One of them being we need to be really good at our instrument. The other one being, we need to have proper phrasing and articulation. Another one being, obviously, we need to have material for our solos. Another one being ear training. Like, there's all these different things that go into being a jazz musician. And I think sometimes we squirrel ourselves into like, okay, well, I use transcriptions to take vocabulary and learn it in all 12 keys and then insert it into my solo. Or I strictly use melodies for ear training, and then obvious other reasons like we need to, know melodies to play jazz, right? Like when we go to a gig or jam session, we have to know those melodies. But there's such a world of other things that we can do with this material, and I want to dive into that a little bit this week. What I want to talk about is how we can take a simple phrase and we can turn it into anything we want to. And we could take, and in fact, what we're going to do starting in this episode over the course of the month is we're going to take just a tiny little phrase, the opening phrase from Billie's Bounce, and we're going to sort of extrapolate it into a whole bunch of different things that we can work on. Namely, these things are going to be exercises, but I'm going to show you how you could get a month's worth of exercises to practice with this through line of, hey, it all came from the first phrase of Billie's Bounce. And this will be really good for you because if you constantly feel the need to buy new books or, find something brand new or reinvent the wheel, you don't really need to do that. If you can develop the skill of taking something simple and being creative with it in terms of what you're going to do to flip that simple phrase, you'll quickly realize that anytime that you ever think, I've kind of gotten everything I can from this, that's really just a limit of your imagination at the end of the day. So what I hope to do with this is to unlock the possibilities of how many things we can do with one tiny little idea. Okay, so let's dive in. Again, what I mentioned was that we are going to use the first little phrase of Billie's Bounce, which sounds like this. Just that. That's the only thing that we are going to deal with this week. But it's such a great phrase. So let's start by thinking about what's actually going on here and why it's so great, why I actually chose it. So we are in the key of concert F, and let me play it again for you. So we start on the fifth, and then we do this really cool thing where we use a lower chromatic neighbor tone of the fifth. We play 5, we go down to that chromatic note, and then we come back up to 5. That in itself is like such a great concept, right? Such a great bebop concept. So now what do? We play that little thing. Then we jump up to the root. Then what we see is we see a chromatic approach to the third. Again, another really, really fantastic, not only bebop thing, but a blues thing. That's really, really typical in the blues to be playing, right? So we've got the flat third to the 3, which is really kind of the essence of the blues, is sort of living in that place between the flat third and the major third and utilizing both of them in a really musical way. So we've got this so far. And then we jump back down to the root, and then we go down to the 6th, and then we come back up to the root, and we do it again. Now, this is also really important because a lot of people will really lean on that flat 7 over the blues, which there's nothing wrong with that at all. I love using that note. But really, like the more traditional sound of the blues, like if you listen to Louis Armstrong and Sidney Bechet and a lot of these proto-jazz musicians that came before Charlie Parker, you hear them using the 6 a lot more than the flat 7. You hear phrases like, I'm sure you've heard stuff that sounds like that. So Charlie Parker utilizes that here. You hear him use that sound of the 6. And Charlie Parker, when he was playing the blues, he would often consider the 1 chord to be more like a major 6 chord than a dominant 7th chord. So that teaches us that right there as well. So think about what we have here. We have like a study in lower chromatic neighbor tones on both the 5th and the 3rd. And we get that sound of the 6, which if you don't use it, 6 to 1 has a lot of gravity. So this is great if that's a deficiency in your playing anywhere, right? 2 extremely, extremely amazing concepts in one tiny little phrase. So what are we going to do with this in week 1? Well, we're going to do the old faithful, take this phrase and move it around to all the keys. That's going to be the start, because as we dig a little bit deeper into this and as we start to transform this phrase into other things that aren't the phrase anymore, what we want to do is we want to really, really have a great handle on this exact phrase. So we're going to do just like the old school thing of taking this phrase and just putting it in all 12 keys. So maybe you want to start with the circle of fourths. So you would play it in F. Then you would put it in B flat. Then put it in B flat. I said B flat, I meant E flat. And just go right around the circle of fourths like that. You could also investigate doing it in some different orders, and that would provide a very different feeling of putting it through all 12 keys. So you could do it in half steps. Also really good for your flexibility of moving through the keys. You could do it in whole steps. And basically any order that you want to. I really lean on those. Circle of fourths because it's so indicative of harmonic movement in jazz. Chromatic and whole steps. I just really like those 3 orders, okay? So that's going to be your job for this week, is to just get it happening in all 12 keys. And if you don't do much of that work, it might be kind of difficult for you. If you do that work all the time with like long pieces of vocabulary, this might happen super fast, and then you might want to investigate the different orders. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give all the Patreon members a sheet with the initial idea written out, and then just a handy little chord sheet with all the different orders on it. And then I'm also going to give you a track where I'm playing it through all the keys in a couple different orders, and you can use that to test yourself to see if you have it in a place where you can kind of go through all the keys. So that'll be for the Patreon members. And if you really spend the week getting this thing down as sort of like a warm-up / vocabulary / technique exercise, then you'll be ready for some of the other things that we're going to do, where we're going to start to flip this idea into many, many different ideas that will touch on a whole bunch of different skills. Okay. So if you're not sure what I'm talking about when I say Patreon, that's how we support this show. We don't do any ads on the show, so we just rely on listeners like you, jazz students like you, that like what we're doing here and want the materials that go along with the episode. So you donate a small amount of money to us each and every month, and in return for that, you get materials for every single episode. You can find out more about that, get signed up, and get instant access to everything by going to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, clicking on one of the Patreon banners, or you can go to patreon.com and you can search for the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. All the info is there. Once you get signed up, you're good to go. We've got over 350 people supporting the show, which is so amazing. Thank you to everybody that is supporting the show. And we couldn't do this without you. And I'd be happy to have you over there if you're new to the show. All right, everybody, we will see you in the next episode, where we'll do something a little bit different, but base everything that we're doing off of this phrase. Hope you're all doing well, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.